1 week into the Middle East descent into the unknown, where retaliation, destruction, and existential threats collide. Iran's missiles are cracking occupying Israel's ironclad defenses, while whispers grow of even deadlier weapons still waiting in the shadows. The cost interceptors running dry. Tehran and Washington stutters through what appear to be doomed negotiations. Settlers fleeing in panic, and a colonial project teetering on the brink of its own contradictions. Hello there and welcome to our tonight's show. We'll kick it off with the latest updates on the ground. Tehran escalates assault with precision strikes deep inside occupied Palestine. Iran's Revolutionary Guard launched the 14th wave of Operation True Promise 3 early Thursday, targeting the Zionist Army's command and intelligence hub near Soroka Hospital in Beersheba. Iranian media described the barrage, dozens of drones and over 30 missiles as the most intense in 48 hours, leaving 271 injured and causing widespread damage. Later in the day, Iran intensified attacks with more than 100 drones and missiles striking military and industrial sites in the occupied cities of Haifa and Tel Aviv. By the evening, sirens blared across northern occupied territories, including the Golan and Galilee regions. One missile reportedly struck the home of a former Zionist minister. Zionist sources confirmed that at least 24 settlers killed and 838 wounded, with over 5,000 evacuated since the beginning of the Iranian retaliatory campaign. Iran's latest strikes have shaken Israel's air defenses, but experts warn the most advanced missiles may still be on the shelf. As interceptors run low and Tehran keeps its next-generation arsenal under wraps, the regional balance of power may be shifting fast. Let's follow this report by لإعلاناتكم.
The latest confrontation between Iran and Israel is more than a flare-up. It's a strategic shift in the balance of power across the Middle East. For years, experts viewed the standoff between both sides as a tense balance of deterrence, whereby Israel's conventional military warfare was more or less checked by Iran's unconventional capabilities, especially its growing arsenal of missiles and drones. But that balance is now breaking down. Iran's recent missile and drone attacks have stunned Israeli defense planners not just for their scope and precision, but for what they reveal. Tehran may not even be using its most advanced systems yet. Military analysts have identified several tactics that made Iran's recent strikes devastatingly effective. Irregular timing, decoys, a mix of ballistic and fatal drones, and the use of vast targeting data. The result, repeated breaches of Israel's multi-layered defense systems from Iron Dome to David's Sling and even the advanced Arrow system. And now, Israel is running low on interceptors. A new report by the Wall Street Journal confirms that Israel is depleting its stock of Arrow anti-missile systems, a worrying sign as Iran's long-range capabilities loom large. U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal that Washington was aware of the shortage of months and have scrambled to bolster Israeli defenses. The Pentagon has deployed additional assets on land, at sea, and in the air, but concerns are growing that both the U.S. and Israel are burning through interceptors faster than they can be replaced. Meanwhile, Iran continues to warn that none of the occupied territories is safe, and experts believe several generations of long-range Iranian missiles remain hidden as part of a strategy of phased escalation and calculated surprise. What was once a gray zone confrontation fought through proxies and cyber attacks is now inching closer to direct high-intensity warfare with no guarantees of containment. As both sides recalibrate, one truth becomes clear. In this new phase of conflict, missile supremacy may redefine deterrence, and the next strike might not be one anyone sees coming.
Okay, now let's welcome our three leading experts who will help us analyze this critical situation. Joining us live from California is Dr. Hamoud Saleh, Associate Dean and Professor of Political Science at California State University. From New York, Mr. Mohammed Grisassi, a geopolitical and financial analyst. And finally, from Paris, joining us tonight as well, is Dr. Abdel Toumi, geopolitical analyst specialized in the MENA regions and Maghreb affairs. Gentlemen, thank you for agreeing to be with us tonight.
Thank you for the invite and welcome to this honorable panel that I always have pleasure to share with.
Let's dive right into the discussion. Let me start with you, Mr. Dr. Hamoud Salhi. With Iran's 14th wave of strikes penetrating deep into the occupied Palestinian territories, targeting command centers, industrial sites, and even a former minister's home, does Tehran's demonstrated ability to sustain precision attacks at a scale mark a turning point in its military strategy against the Zionist entity?
The result, as Marwa's reports indicates, there is some kind of shift in the balance of power on the side of the Iranians. This could be explained by the fact that what we're funding every day, there is a new technology. Initially, the Iranians began with really old missiles or old materials. They were built under the old Soviet Union, or the Russian, but later on, things have changed, and Iran's continue to bring new tools and new technology, and it seems this will be the difference. On the other hand, one of the interesting point, the point that Marwa makes in terms of the arrows, depleting arrows, and the need to come to bring more to help the Israelis. There is another factor associated with that. A ballistic missile cost around $20,000. That's not too much, but a response by Israelis technologies like an arrow or others, it costs them millions. We're talking about at least $4 million for each one. So the cost is very heavy. And in addition to that, the advancement of technology, the military technology that we've seen from Iran so far, and it continues to be we see surprises, is made in Iran, which means that they have the capacity and they have the stockpiles, and they don't run or risk losing or running out of depletion, just as we've seen with the arrow. So at this point, that's where we are. But we should not undermine the Israeli power. The Israeli military is very important. They have advanced technologies. And the Israelis, as we know, they are not the only one who are fighting. It's the American intelligence. American provides about 60% of all what is used in this war. You have the British, you have other countries that are, or the Western world that are helping the Israelis. So in general, we see that the Iranians have lived up to the expectations and done more, surprised a lot. But but with America's behind, we just have to be sort of cautious and see how this will turn out later.
We'll come to the United States later. In this show, Mr. Mohammed Sassi, occupying Israel is burning through missile interceptors faster than they can be replaced. At a current depletion rates, how long can Israel sustain its air defense capabilities at this point?
Well, apparently, as Dr. Sarhi said, Israel was, as we said, the victim of his own miscalculation. Number one, undermining the Iran resilience to fight. And also that Iran was prepared for this for more than 20 years, since 1996, even a little bit before. But now, through this turning, Israel have been embroiled in multiple conflicts. This includes the war with Lebanon, the assassination of democracy, of a democratically elected Palestinian, the extensive bombardment of Syria and Yemen, culminating with the widely condemned genocide in Gaza, or then Netanyahu. Now, claiming his self-defense when in fact it is self-aggression. That's also something that even in Israel, he is the element of fatigue that is coming. Now they find out that, even with the complicity of the Western world, it's very troubling, even for the Israeli, because they have been impacted psychologically. Not only economically, because when these soldiers they are going to go to war in South Lebanon, etc., and guarding the occupied territory, they cannot be within the economical machine. So therefore, we have two fronts here for Netanyahu. Number one, he's losing. Now Iran, as the Dr. Salhi said, have the upper hand. And they are using old missiles. Wait until the missiles, supersonic missiles are coming. And then I was saying before, the last version of the most modern one that they were produced in Iran. And also they receive it from Russia. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. Now, what is remaining for the power of Netanyahu? Nothing. He's like the prince without clothes. So he goes where? He goes to Mr. Trump. And Trump is changing his mind. A few days ago, he said, we want the ultimatum, we want the surrender, and today it comes with 2 weeks. Why is it coming with 2 weeks? That's the question that everybody is asking. What happened to this shift in, how I call it, this is my own interpretation, the Trump shifting sand about these 2 weeks delay, and we ask different question. One thing I want to be brief. I talk about, Netanyahu, what he's facing as a problem, but now it's Trump that is facing some problem. When the Pakistani come and often they have this conversation and they raise the specter of the terrorism. Of course, Trump have to think about it. And also, he want to do an intervention. And Pakistani, they say, don't you remember 2003, the debacle that you did have in the Middle East? And everybody remember what happened in the UN with the Dominique de Villepin when he was facing Powell. And Powell was saying, they have the nuclear power, exactly the same now. History repeats itself. This is what they are doing with Iran. Not only that, and when you go to the European reluctance to the intervention, Netanyahu again and again make a miscalculation. He was thinking that Europe is going to follow him. No, they didn't, except for England. Macron, after the G7, what did he say? He said, now we have to look for a ceasefire, and we don't want what you are asking, which is changement of regime. They have the sour experience in our Hatafi. So again and again, what is left for Netanyahu, except that he have to go and cry babies, as I said, to go to Trump. And Trump now, after the consultation, after the cabinet, and he's not, maybe him, he have in mind that but the people around him say, would you like to go back to 2003? Look what the Pakistani is telling you. What you are going to do if there's anything when the bag will come back home. And I try to be brave because I know I always take a lot of time. But
it's fine,
this is again and again the fact that you are looking is no more. I just would like to say again, I repeat it. Now is not the kingmaker. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Abdel Toumi, analysts say Tehran may be holding back its most advanced weapons systems here. What would happen if Iran deployed its next generation missiles in this conflict? Mr. Abdel Toumi, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
I said analysts say Tehran may be holding back its most advanced weapons system. We're talking here about the upper hand, as both of our panelists we're talking about. What would happen if Iran deployed its next generation missiles in this conflict?
Actually, that's what I was trying to say. It is, in fact, there is this shift that happened, particularly in the last 24 hours. And this has said, it's not only about the deterrence equation in the region, but also the demystification of the colonial state army, an army that was actually portrayed as the most powerful and solid army in the region. Now, what happened in its carnage, or the carnage is taking place on the non-state actor resistance movement in Palestine, I mean, who has been resilient, the resistance has been resilient and powerful. And then we saw that what happened last summer with the same, with another non-actor state like Hezbollah in Lebanon, and then followed by the military campaign with the Houthis, Houthis, who have actually imposed their trajectory and pushed or obliged President Donald Trump to negotiate and to hold the actually aggression, or what they call it, the aggression, it's the resistance, and showing their support for the Palestinians. Now, for Iran, it is in this equation with like very, very high level. And this is why there is this shift, speaking of shifts, this diplomatic shift, and that was actually fed by shadow diplomacy. And what we are seeing now, following the week of the aggression of the current state on Iran. So President Trump has decided now to give diplomacy a chance, and indeed, and he might have heard from his militaries, and that war risks are greater than the current state premier or prime minister led him to believe. And also, and again, Iran's display of missiles power in the last 24 hours. And this is why now the Iranians are moving into the next step. So this, we will see what's going to happen in these coming 2 weeks of diplomacy, but 2 weeks, it's 14 days, but it could happen in 24 hours, 48 hours. So it's an open 14 days are coming, will decide or will shape this military campaign.
Mr. Hamoud Salhi, the U.S. is scrambling to backfill Israel's dwindling interceptor stocks. Do you think, does Washington risk overextending its own military resources by supporting occupying Israel's, defense needs?
Islam, I think the issue is bigger than that. The United States has moved or is moving in Nimitz, USS Nimitz from the Pacific. That is a strategic area, an area that is very close to what the United States consider as its major enemy, that is China. In addition, also, United States has, in the Middle East, Vincent, another aircraft carrier, and it has F-35, and it has now the biggest bomb that everybody is talking about. So it has facilities in the region. It's not the power, the weapons that Israel has, that the United States is missing. The other thing that we should also consider, that the United States has its own stockpile in Israel, and this stockpile is designed to be used for strategic reason. It includes the most sophisticated weapon, intelligence, and all of that. So, and that's at the benefit for the Israelis. Donald Trump could issue, it could make the decision to use that stockpile without having to resort to Congress. So there is a plenty of weapons, of ammunition, and very advanced ammunition that the United States has in its hand. The problem is not there. The problem, number one, is that you have a resilient Iranian force that seems to surprise the Israelis, particularly after the first day. A second, that Trump himself has always been sort of very careful about not engage in ways that would sort of be detrimental to America's national interest. Bob Woodward, in his book, the Washington Post columnist and Pulitzer known for his work, in his book on the war, talks about how despite every Arab leaders were telling the Biden and Trump to get rid of the I mean, they will have no problems with Iran. John Bolton, the former national security advisor, is on record stating that Trump did not want to engage, to go fight with Iran. In fact, he was looking forward to meet them. The point is this: the decision today. Another point and I'll finish with this, Islam. There is a poll. Polls are easy these days to manipulate and use however you want. But a very interesting poll that reminds us perhaps of another region. It is stated in one of the polls that 60% of Americans do not favor an attack on Iran. This is just recently. It came in the last few days. But you have also 69%, just to finish the point, Islam, 69% of Americans see Iran as a threat. So if you are Trump, you have a problem. On the one hand, they're telling you there is a threat, but at the same time, they are opposite. What you do is that you take 2 weeks, and I'm sure we'll come back to that and address that issue from a different perspective.
Mr. Sassi, let's talk a bit about the aftermath on the occupied Palestinian territories, given Israel's reported paralysis. For example, the disrupted economies, shuttered schools, and civilians in bunkers. I mean, is Iran's long war strategy systematically dismantling the Zionist entity's foundations?
Already you have the historical roots of inequality within Israel. If you talk about the Ashkenazi elite, for example, they always think that historically they were the dominant culturally, politically, and economically. And then you have the Israeli Jews. Then when you look at that, they come mostly from the Arab and the Muslim country. And they were also considered comme les sepulchres, the untouchable of, if I may say, of Israel. And then you have the Russian immigrant. But all of this, yes, is a crisis as a catalyst. On the top of it, you have this war with the warmonger as Netanyahu. So the unity around the flag in Israel now is flagrant. They are looking and asking. You have more, for example, Jew quitting Israel than coming from just what I'm saying, the Arab country or from Russia, etc. And this have an impact, a direct impact on the stability of the country. And if you look at the peripheral communities, like the Muslim region, they are more exposed to attack and suffer from the bomb the missile sent from Iraq. Why? Because they don't have the infrastructure. It's like when you go to Haifa, the same thing. Haifa, you have the community, the Muslim community that is there. They don't have this protection. And it's the same with certain community of Israel and then of the Jew in Israel. And then we begin to feel it. And this is also why Netanyahu, I think maybe it's coincidental, but as I said, he wants to repeat of what he did in South Lebanon, repeat of Gaza, etc. But it didn't work, as Dr. Sarhi was saying, as well as my friend Toumi. They didn't expect this kind of resilience. And now, to come back to Trump also, when he came back to the state, he did the masterful trumpeting all over the place in the G7, but they come back home, it was like a waking call for him. Today, when he go to the Congress, 32 of them, they said, what are you doing? You can use your power to defend a friendly country, but here the aggressor is Israel, and you are sick and tired of doing all this billion for something that you have nothing to do with it. And the specter, again and again, of 2003 is there. They were there, they have the experience, they know what happened, and they don't want to do it. Now, economically, of course, the ripple of this, any devastating one. But in the long run, they cannot sustain it. As Sarhi was saying, one missile from Iran is about between $5,000 and $10,000. To desert it, to stop it, it cost about $100,000. And this, in the long run, they cannot sustain a long run. Sustain it. They can. And America come to a point that now they are looking. And also, don't forget, you have the second front. You have the image of America. How can we be sustaining and continuing to support a Zionist state, genocidaire, and killing every single day children going to get some bread or some flour? And that's the image is so strong. I was coming yesterday, I went to the UN, and I was passing by the American mission to the UN. What did I see? Blonde, blue eyes, young guys, and also old people with the pancart saying, we don't want to go to war. We don't want to go to defend Israel. Is nothing in it for us. That's something that it was not imaginable only few years back when you talk about Israel. And despite all these lobbies, so on and so forth, mostly the people who now are manifesting against Israel, they are Jews. Columbia University, we talked about that before. Mainly they were Jews who was manifesting. And they are saying, no, we don't want that. And this is why I think now Netanyahu, everybody find out that is not credible. On the contrary, you have Iran that did a wonderful job in terms of taking not advantage, I'm not going to say that, but to Iran, they how can I say that? They take a stance because the diminishing credibility of Israel.
Mr. Abdel Toumi, thank you. Let me turn to Mr. Abdel Toumi now, Mr. Sassi. Mr. Abdel Toumi, as Iran continues its strategy of controlled escalation, maintaining an element of surprise by withholding the most advanced missile systems from the current conflict, how might this calculated approach to weapons deployment affect the balance of power and deterrence dynamics in the region?
Again, as we said earlier, it is in fact a shift on balance. And as you said, actually the strategies of the colonial states, the Zionists, were hit by the surprise. And because as a result of their, first of all, arrogance, and also the narrative that they sold or that they have been portraying in the media, actually Western media, and unfortunately even this narrative was bought by some Arab media as I'm talking about this army as the invincible army and the most powerful army in the region. Now, what we are seeing now and coming from these, the images that coming from the ground, it shows totally the opposite. And this is why the premier of the Zionist state now is actually in a panic mode, because on one hand, he wants to go or to continue, as we say in French, to go with his Giscard-Boutiste approach by dragging the Americans to clash directly with Iran on one hand. On the other hand, he doesn't have an exit strategy, and this is why now what happened today or the last hours with the decision of the U.S. President Donald Trump, actually, who have decided or wanted to score a frame argument with a frame agreement with Iran, the one actually that he destroyed in 2018 as a result of what was told by the colonial state premier then. So now the entire, I would say, we are in that process of the reshuffle cards. And this is what will be very interesting in the next hours and weeks. This is in terms of what was going to happen between the U.S. and the Iranians on one hand, because they will be holding direct talks. And I think the U.S. President Donald Trump, now he is listening carefully to his military expert, because he knows well that he doesn't want to get in and to bring his troops and get into another, not only a military impasse, but will be a quagmire like what happened to the George Bush in Iraq. And this brings us to, like for him, and it's very, very important for the American president, because he has elections coming next year, and he's looking for his legacy. But as we all know, how he actually pays too much attention to his image, and he's looking for his legacy. And this is why he is now focusing on these talks and Iran's, because actually, just again, a day ago, he was saying, I need these unconditional surrender or capitulation. But the Iranians are not going to accept this. And to the contrary, they will go and they will talk to him, and they will reset that table, the negotiation table, based on respect and respect and listening to us. And you have to listen to us.
Thank you, Mr. Abdel Toumi, for your analysis. All right, gentlemen, we'll carry on our debate right after taking a look at the recent updates on the diplomatic fronts. Now, Reuters reports that the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi have held multiple phone calls since Zionist attacks on Iran began last week. According to 3 diplomats, the talks aim to de-escalate the crisis, but Araghchi firmly ruled out any return to negotiations unless the aggression stops. The discussions also touched on a U.S. proposal presented in late May to create a regional alliance for uranium enrichment outside Iran, an offer Tehran has so far rejected. Meanwhile, Araghchi confirmed his heading to Geneva on Friday for talks with the European countries, Britain, France, and Germany, after receiving an official invitation for a joint consultative meeting. The Iranian Guardian Council on Thursday warned that the United States that any military intervention alongside its ally Israel would be met with harsh response. In a statement broadcast on Iranian state television, the council called on the American administration and President Donald Trump to realize that they face a harsh response from the Islamic Republic of Iran if they commit a mistake and take action against Iran. The council's statement adds. On the other hand, White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt said President Trump will decide within 2 weeks whether to join the war between Israel and Iran. She emphasized that Trump has made significant efforts to pursue a diplomatic solution and believes there is still a chance for talks with Tehran. Leavitt also described the proposal by U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff as realistic and acceptable, suggesting that negotiations with Iran remain on the table for now. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, despite U.S.-Iran backchannel talks, Tehran refuses negotiations unless Zionist attacks cease. Does Iran's here firm rejection of diplomacy until aggression stops signal an unbreakable red line, or is it Geneva's Troika meeting a potential way out?
The Iranian position is very, very clear. It's a red line where the Americans are telling the Iranians surrender. And these are our conditions. And surrender means you get rid of your nuclear weapons. That's when we negotiate. And we don't know whether these negotiations are about, perhaps there was a proposal before that a third country could be involved in building in that sort of area, centrifuge being mentored or monitored by a third country. That would have been Russia in this case. But Islam, there is a very, very important point to look at. President Trump, when he came out and made his statement or a statement that was made to him, he was quoted, and I am sort of, this is specific. He talked about his opening statement was that based on the fact that there are negotiations, there is a substantial chance of negotiation. It may not happen. I will decide in 2 weeks. That is his statement. Now, how did this statement go how it was interpreted. The major news networks, including our CNN and others, reported this statement as President Trump gives 2 weeks to Iran to decide and to decide. That's a different what Trump does. Another one is you have Rubio, the Secretary of State and interim National Security Advisor, is on record stating that if Iran is 60% centrifuge or about to make its nuclear weapon, it can jump in a week for 90%. And that's to add to the idea that Iran gives CNN reports that Trump gives Iran 2 weeks to decide, which is within weeks to build its nuclear weapons. Now, what's happening? There is a serious disagreement, apparently, from this position between the so-called traditionalist, isolationist in Trump camp. These are who believe strongly that the United States should not be involved in a conflict. These are the people who adhere to Trump's belief that he doesn't want to be involved in endless wars, as he described it. Mm-hmm. And then you have people as Secretary of State. These are the new conservative. The Secretary of State, Mario Rubio, to me mentioned earlier the elections. Rubio is set to run for the presidency, and he's pushing for Trump to make that decision quickly. Now, if we just hear the Iranian side don't believe what Trump is saying. What one could attribute this either to some kind of mechanical issue, some kind of logistic issue that is preempting the United States from getting this very quickly, or that Trump is seriously thinking about this. And I do believe that is where we are, that Trump is not convinced that this attack he should be attacking Iran, but there is the media and the people around him are pushing it for it. He has the last day, and we just have, the last word, and I think we have to watch that carefully.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Mohammed Sassi, Iran's Guardian Council has explicitly warned the United States against military intervention. Is Iran's rhetoric aimed at deterring American action here, or does it risk narrow Trump's options or provoking the very conflict Washington seeks to avoid?
I think what the supreme leader of Iran is doing is nothing since day one when they were attacked. They said, you don't want to go back to the servitude, you are not going to accept the submission, and neither this, surrender without condition. Now, Iran never closed the path to find a path, an avenue for peace. They ask for the session at the UN. They are accepting the call from France, from Russia, to sit down and try to find a pathway for a diplomatic solution, because they do understand what is the cost of the war. And I think they were very genuine, which is not the case, and they cannot trust America. When you know what they did, just to rephrase what my dear colleague before me said, 60 days on 61 is like a knife in the back of the Iranian who was really trying to negotiate a peace agreement, trying to negotiate les accords with the IAE. But Trump, again and again, was acting like a Machiavellic, how can I say, I don't want to say bad word here, like c'est la trahison de Trump. And then on the top of it, now they come with 2 weeks. How now Iran is going to trust him? He come before, he said he's not going to be involved, and then he said he's going to be involved, and then he come with reiteration, and even go to capitulation, and he went to the fact, to the extent of asking for killing the supreme leader, as the warmonger Netanyahu was doing. So I think they are genuine in their look, the pathway for peace, but look what they are dealing with. And again, what's saying Mr. Dr. Salhi, within America now, when you have a pandit of the Republican Party like Tucker Carlson, who is engaged in a fight on TV with Senator Ted Cruz over Iran on Tuesday. This is unbelievable. These are two pillars of the MAGA. They used to be. And now they said, no, we cannot do that. We have to stop. We have to talk to Trump and tell him, don't go that way. It's going to be too costly. It's already too costly for us. It's already too costly for our environment. And you have here Iran, they are the upper hand with the attack and the way they answer to Israel. I'm not going to repeat what was said before, but in another hand, they can sustain the long run, and they prove it. And we said before on this forum, the war with Iraq, 1980 to 1988, they were by themselves, and they did survive. How come now, with all what they have, with all the preparation that they did have for all this year, they are not going to? Of course, they are going to win in the long run. Even if military is impossible to have, as I said, the military victory that they are, and I don't think they are looking for that either. But Netanyahu lost totally his war. And again, this impenetrable, untouchable Israel, the power of this and that, we saw in 7 October, the October 7, we see it again with the dome is like, as I said before on this show, like a Swiss cheese. And then you have the psychological effect in Israel with this young soldier that they want to fight. So, of course, Iran is winning. And Iran, as I repeat it again, they are genuine and they are going to trust. They can go to a pathway with people that they can trust more or less the European. And I think it will happen.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed Sassi. We move on now to a different matter. Zionist settlers flee the Palestinian-occupied lands, flocking to Europe on boats and yachts via Cyprus harbors. This comes at a time when the Zionist leaders have barred these settlers from fleeing through air trips. Sama Yadi has the full story now.
Chaos and panic gripped the Zionist entity as settlers scrambled to flee occupied Palestinian lands amid Iran's downpouring of all types of missiles on the entity's settlements. This mass exodus exposes the deep fractures within the Zionist society built on colonial occupation and now crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. What social media has shown is unprecedented. Zionist settlers who once believed their occupation was permanent are now fleeing in droves. Even Hebrew newspapers have reported that groups online had been formed to coordinate alternative escape routes by sea. Just days after orders to domestic airlines to stop all outbound flights, a genuine departure hub has emerged on the shores of the occupied territories. People were seen with suitcases in tow, boarding yachts bound for Cyprus. From this point, analysts exposed three fatal weaknesses in the entity's social cohesion, highlighting that the population represents a society of immigrants, not natives. Most of the Zionist people are foreign settlers with no historic ties to the land. When crisis hits, the loyalty is not to the land, but to survival. Ethnic and class divisions also show that the Zionist entity is deeply divided between Ashkenazi elites, Sephardic Mizrahi, and Ethiopian Jews, as well as Russian immigrants, all treated unequally. In times of war, these cracks widen. Analysts also highlight that this is the Achilles heel of the Zionist project. A colonial regime cannot sustain itself when its people lack true rootedness.
We reject the displacement. Even we continue living on rubble, the rubble of our homes, the rubble of our ancestors, the homes of our ancestors, our country that is dear to our hearts.
The Palestinian people, on the other hand, have remained steadfast for decades, defending their home. While the occupiers flee, the Palestinian people stay despite starvation, killing, and attempts of displacement. This is the difference between a stolen land and a homeland. The Zionist entity's greatest weakness was always its artificial foundation, and now the world watches as it crumbles.
Mr. Abdel Tomi, long story short, as Zionist settlers flee en masse while Palestinians remain steadfast on their own land. I mean, does this mass exodus fundamentally undermine Zionism claim to be an indigenous movement?
Actually, this is sort of justice for the real owners of the land. And we here on this respected network and with my dear friends and colleagues and millions of Algerians, we know what that means. So when it comes to this complex equation between a colonizer and a colonized. So that's obvious. And we Algerians, actually, my generation, we were born after the independence, but we saw that through my parents and grandparents and all millions of Algerians, how that occupation and acculturation processes that went through for 132 years. And in the end, there were justice. And that justice was by the resilience and the resistance of the people who own the land. So this is actually was obvious, and it's going, actually, we were not, I'm not going to say expecting to see that, but following what the entire region and Muslims actually were going through in era of pre-October 7, 2023. So this is why the October 7, 2023, the Al-Aqsa flood operation was direct answer to these, what we are watching via our networks and reading in the papers. So, but to sum up this, so it is different between the Palestinians actually, and you just showed in the reportage about that Palestinian woman who is actually, I mean, in her land, on her land, on her, actually, it's her roots are rooted there, and she is saying, "I am staying here," and this is the contrary and kind of surreal image of those occupiers and who steal the land of the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. So it's all about justice and sure the resistance and the resilience of the Palestinians. And let me say this. So what we have learned from, first of all, during all these months of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement, and let's say the genocide that is taking place, and this carnage day in, day out, so has showed that the Palestinian cause is alive. And we all know, as analysts, in the region, all politics is regional, but now the Palestinian cause has made it, all politics is local.
I'll go back to you later, Mr. Abdel Tomi, if we still have time. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, briefly, analysts have long warned that immigrant societies lack the resilience of native populations. I mean, is this issue proving that settler colonial projects are inherently unstable during crises?
No, I think we have to make huge distinctions between illegal immigrant and the settlers. The settlers are occupiers. And what's very, very important is to examine the demographics. The pictures we saw out of Haredis Jewish groups who would be difficult to see them leaving. Who is leaving when you look at the demographic of Israel until Oslo, or until the collapse of the Soviet Union, the vast majority of the Israelis were living in what we call kibbutz. These are people who believe that appeasement and peace with Israel, with the Arabs, is their way out. To live in peace is to get normalized relations. And then we had about 1 million Jews from the Russia, and then we had a shift in the peace negotiation under Oslo from land for peace which was to get the Palestinians and the Israeli living together to land for security. That's where what's his name, Netanyahu came big. In 2009, and I'm just jumping because I know we don't have time, 2009, Barack Obama comes in and say, Iran has the potential to be a nuclear power. In 2012, 2014, we began to build the dome that is financed today by the American money, which is protecting Israel from all these missiles. And then follow that, you have the wall in the West Bank. The perception in Israel was up to this point, if we are strong enough, and we have strong security, we are safe. What October 7 did, and what this latest attack Iranian did, is that dismantle that belief. And this is why the young generation, particularly the young Jews who are born there, who have not experienced and who do not have the religious belief, are leaving Israel because this is not what they signed for. In addition, remember the right of
Hamoud Salhi. That brings us to the end of our show for tonight, unfortunately. 7 days of tense moments. The Middle East stands at a crossroads now. Iran's missiles are now shattering occupying Israel's invincibility myth. A fragile security situation growing more complex by the hour. Diplomatic channels strain under the weight of mutual demands as regional tensions reach new heights. The Zionist dream unravels in real time. Privileged settlers who stole Palestinian land now fight for escape routes. Thank you to our guests, Mr. Hamoud Salhi, Mr. Mohammed Kourisasi, and Mr. Abdel Noor Toumi. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in. And see you next time.